Good morning. I'm Jay Lenora Bressler, and welcome to the Friday, April 17, 2020 edition of the Bible Delight in the Details. This is part two of a three-part series on one of the post-resurrection appearances of Christ, chronicled in John chapter 21. We talked yesterday about part of this. This is the story where it's the third time we're told that Jesus has appeared to a larger group of the disciples. And it is out in the early morning. The disciples, led by, or seven of them, led by Peter, have been out fishing all night and they did not catch anything. And then some man, whom they did not recognize at first, called out to them, "Friends, have you no fish?" And they said no. They were on their way back in to shore, and he said to go back out and throw the nets on the opposite side. They did it, and it was more than they could carry practically. It was a miracle that the net did not break itself. And then John, the disciple that Christ loved, said, told Peter that that's the Lord, and Peter jumped right out of the boat. As we read yesterday, it says that he put on his outer garment because he had been fishing. So now we want to talk about this in a little more depth. You know, we all know that Peter denied Christ, and we know how bad he felt about that. We talked about that on Easter, how we don't know any of the details about that first reunion between Jesus and Peter, but we know it occurred on that first day, and how that must have been as Peter and Jesus came together that first time after the denial, and how Jesus reconciled him and brought him back. But it's very interesting that Jesus is giving Peter a second chance on a lot of levels. When you hear this story about Peter, a boat, Jesus, and all, it should make you think about another incident that occurred, and that's when Peter wanted to walk on the water, remember, to Jesus, and he was successfully doing it. But then what happened? He got his eyes off Jesus, and he looked around at his circumstance, and he looked around at the water, and he got scared, and he started to sink. Remember? And this is like take two of that. Now, there's no indication in John 21 that Peter walked on the water. But you see, when you understand who you're going to, when you understand who God is, you don't have to walk on the water. You don't need a miracle, a supernatural thing to occur that is blatant and obvious. You have the confidence in God that does not require that miracles be performed on a daily basis in your presence for you to have the faith. You already know. And so it's fascinating that on this occasion, Jesus is identified, he's out there, and we don't know anything about the condition of the ocean. Do you realize that? Or the sea, the water? Because you see, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter to Peter. If it was calm, if it was choppy, if it was frightening, it didn't matter. He knew where he was going, and there was God, there was Jesus, and he was going. And he didn't worry about this. And he got there safely, as we know. He had breakfast with the Lord. This is so important. Now, some of you may say, well, what is this about? In John 21, it says that he put on his coat or his cloak before he jumped in the water. What was that about? Well, it is very common, even to this day, that fishermen at the Sea of Galilee would strip down. Not necessarily totally naked, especially in Jewish culture, that would not have been done. There would be some kind of a loincloth, some kind of covering in that way. But you would be stripped down. And obviously, Peter, recognizing that this is God, Jesus, the risen Christ, he did not think that it would be appropriate. He was trying to show honor. But it's interesting that he knew he was going to get wet. He didn't care. So he was showing respect, but it wasn't for him to look good. I mean, he was just doing what he felt like he needed to do to be respectful. But he was going to be a bedraggled little, wet thing when he got there, but he didn't care. I think also another thing that's very interesting here is that, Jesus told these experienced fishermen to go back out during the light. And we talked yesterday about how the kind of fishing that they were doing is not done in the daytime. It's only done at night because of the way they do it. And they went. And so they were doing something very different, very untraditional. And yet what happened? All of this harvest of fish came. And I think that, that's also helping them understand that the way that God was going to now bring in a harvest of souls, it was going to be different than it had been. Up until that time, the nation of Israel, the political entity of the nation of Israel, was the primary way that God was reaching the nations, right? They were to be the shiny city on the hill, right? That would bring the whole world to God. And now there was going to be a different route that was going to be taken. Instead of the world coming to Jerusalem and coming to Israel, the people of God were going to go out to the world. I mean, that's the whole point of the Great Commission, isn't it? Where it's a church on the move. It's a church on the march. And so Jesus is letting them know that what they're used to is not the way we're going to do this anymore. We're going to go a different route, but don't worry, because the harvest will be great. And so he's giving them object lessons that they can really understand. A lot of this probably kind of went over their head at the moment, just like a lot of things that you and I learn go over our heads at the moment. But then later in retrospect, you look and you go, oh, that's what I was supposed to learn out of that. And so I think that that's one of the things that we're supposed to get out of this whole business about go back, fish on the other side of the boat, and it came back so tremendously plentiful. Tomorrow, we will look at exactly what happened during that breakfast that Jesus prepared for them, and how he further helped Peter realize that he could come completely back into the fold and give him that second chance. So visit me tomorrow on the next...